My name is Aisha Jaffrey. I'm the Vice Chair of the Muslim Community Center, and I'm really, really happy to welcome all of you who haven't been here before and the ones that are always here. I really appreciate your attendance tonight. We have a very specific topic today, and that is security. And I want to give note to the number of people who are here to help us, our public servants and our most treasured community members, our police department. So Chief Neslight, Assistant Chief Connolly is here, right? And then Officer Humayun, and Officer Briggs, and Officer Hall, and Officer from the Cultural Lem. I appreciate you. And I even have an officer that can translate for me. And I've met him at several other occasions. Your name, sir?
Officer Saleh.
Welcome. Thank you very much. So the police department is here to talk about personal security, especially amongst these times when we have a lot of things in the news that we're seeing about visible minorities, people who have religious attire that makes them more visible, and then the attacks that some of them have to undergo in the entire United States. But we've had several occasions in San Diego, and the police want to come and inform us and show us how to improve our personal security. But the original aspect of this talk was to talk about house of worship security, developing a welcoming committee that is sort of like the eyes and ears of our facility so that we can be aware of security threats before a threat occurs, and we are vigilant. And I have here Dr. Mark Siegel. He's from San Diego. He is affiliated with San Diego State University. He does, he's written global security standards for at least 13 standards that you've written. And I want him to introduce himself because he has so much information and knowledge about how to make security simplified and not be dependent only on equipment like cameras and police security guards, but ourselves making our homes, and this is our second home. The mosque is considered our second home, or our first home actually. And I would like him to introduce himself because his resume is so impressive, and I'm very blessed to have him here. And he's going to talk about 12 steps to make the house of worship more secure. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a quick word about myself. I'm on the faculty at San Diego State University in the Homeland Security Program. I've worked at ASIS International for about 10 years as their Commissioner of Standards and Guidelines, and developed 13 American national standards on security, resilience, risk management, and then I also chaired the committee in ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, that developed the standard for private security operations and respecting human rights. And then recently I published 2 books on preventing and managing violence in organizations, and now the 12 steps for better house of worship security. So, and the other thing I do, I just got back from Pakistan. I train the largest security company in Pakistan that has the contract to protect the U.S. Embassy and consulates and UN and multinationals. So it's considered the most complicated embassy protection mission in the world, and it's also the largest. I've been doing over the past year since the terror attack on the synagogue in Pittsburgh, free consulting for houses of worship. And what I've really found is that there's a strong focus at houses of worship on buying stuff, trying to pay for either cameras or pay for extra guards to protect the facility, and hopefully the problem goes away. And every place I've gone, they've gone through the run, hide, fight training, and then when I start talking to them about, okay, if you need to evacuate the children from your school, how do you do that? There's a blank stare. Or if you need to shelter in place and hide, how do you do that? Again, a blank stare, or how do you fight? They haven't thought of it. But everybody's seen the video, everybody's gone through the training. It's a similar thing with the See Something, Say Something program. Everybody spouts the phrase, but when we start talking about what are you looking for and how do you notice patterns of something that might be amiss, and if you do see something, who do you say it to, and then what does that person do with the information? The follow-on steps don't exist. So what I've really been focusing on with different houses of worship is taking a step back and going back to the basics of private security, where you're looking at it that it's personal responsibility and it's a process, it's not a procurement. And a lot of the things that you can identify before you start investing in a lot of equipment is understanding how you can train people within your house of worship to be the eyes and ears, how to work with the community surrounding the house of worship so they have better understanding of things that they might notice and who they can communicate that with, so you get a heads up on what's happening. And also the other thing that, unfortunately, working at ASIS International and afterwards I saw a lot of, security companies are in the business of selling you services and selling you equipment. So they'll sell you a lot of stuff that when you begin to think about it, you can't figure out what is the use of that. And so much of what they're selling you is stuff that really isn't going to help prevent something. Maybe if you're lucky, after an incident takes place, it'll help you to identify a suspect. But when you think about most of the active shooter attacks, most of the terror attacks, they're over in a matter of a few minutes. The suspects are either dead or they've turned themselves over to police when the police arrive. So what use did you get out of that equipment? And one of the big popular ones they're pushing now are acoustic sensors. So, there's not a single data point to show that an acoustic sensor makes a difference in an attack on a house of worship or a school. There have been planned exercises where they show law enforcement gets there quicker, but there's not that much information showing that it makes a difference. The other thing I've been trying to emphasize with houses of worship, and as an example, when I was at the Chabad Center at University of Texas, they were going to be pulling money out of their suicide prevention program to pay for more active shooter cameras and things like that. At the end of the day, they're saving lives with their suicide prevention program. And the likelihood of an attack and that the equipment they were going to buy would make a difference was pretty small. So it was also trying to get houses of worship to begin to think about what's the big picture? What are the services you're providing? How are you going to continue to provide those services? And then think out in a planned thought process that you use in typical risk management, how to prioritize what your needs are, and how to get the most value out of expending your resources. So this came out with this 12-step program that I thought would make it easier for people to understand. So the outline of it is here, and over the past few months, I put it together in a little booklet that you can download from Amazon. I'm trying to figure out how to do this as a Kindle version so you can download it for free. But $4.99 was the minimum I could charge if Amazon's going to send you a hard copy. But it really gets down to, first of all, understanding that it's a community effort, it's everybody's responsibility. Everybody can play a role in making the house of worship a better and safer place to be, and making it a more open environment. And one of the first things you need is to actually make a policy statement. The board of directors or whoever is the head of clergy needs to notify people in the congregation that you're focusing on everybody being involved. If anybody sees something that's suspicious, here are the steps involved in reporting it, and what will be done. And obviously, if something's going to get done, that means you have to have a committee that's dealing with security. And part of that committee's job will be when a notification comes in of something that somebody has a concern about, that they look into it, they contact the police if it's something that should involve law enforcement and that is serious, and they have people designated who will communicate back to people what's going on. So setting up the committee becomes really important, and having this policy statement. So the threat assessment team also then needs to start thinking about the big picture. There are lots of things that can happen. I know at least one of the synagogues here was doing everything they could to prevent a car bomb attack and an attack similar to what they would see in Israel. And in the meantime, somebody climbed over the fence and tried to set the place on fire. And they weren't paying attention to that as a potential threat. So it's really beginning to think about all the different types of activities you're doing, all the different types of things that can cause a problem. I mean, we're looking today at fires. Do you have a plan even to deal with if fires came into this neighborhood? What do you need to evacuate? Who do you need to evacuate? Is this center in a place that you could actually receive people into it and shelter in place at the center? So to begin to think about the range of things you need, what are your day-to-day activities, what are the special things you're doing on holidays and at special events that are different, and then start really mapping out. And I have outlines of how to do it in the 12 steps, and I'm actually working with a Pakistani company now, and we're going to put up online on their website actual tools that will help walk you through some of these steps. But, to think about the different types of things that can happen. One of the synagogues I went to, they have a large elderly population. They had a defibrillator that they had bought in case somebody got sick during services, but nobody knew about it. None of the doctors in the congregation knew about it. The only person who knew about it was the rabbi. So, in a way they had spent all this money on something that was serving no purpose. But again, you need to look at the population of your community. If you have a lot of old people, and that is a greater chance that would happen than other risks, then get the equipment, but then you have to build the human element to go with the equipment. So another step in this is start thinking about who in your organization impacts risk and who outside can impact risk on you. So that means start thinking about the different types of people that could cause harm to this community. And what are their characteristics? So when you start looking at their characteristics, that will give you a better idea of how they operate and what types of security equipment and what steps you put in place and how effective they'll be. So I'm just outlining this stuff. I mean, what I've been doing is, anybody who wants to go and dig deep into any of these things, and I donate my time for free for this. So I'll sit with you and walk you through all this. Also, start thinking about what are the demographics of the general area and what makes it, are you a more desirable target or a less desirable target than other people in the area? Are there people, if someone was surveilling, are there neighbors and places around this neighborhood that make it easier to surveil? And like the Montessori school, I know years back, somebody came there and was asking questions about your operations here, and it didn't dawn on them that there was a problem and that there was something odd about the questioning until later, and then somebody came over, but they weren't really clear who to talk about. So it's developing relationships with people like that so it's clear who they need to talk to. And then start thinking about what measures do you have in place. If you have static cameras that are just taking pictures and recording into a computer, think about, does that really do anything to protect you and prevent something from happening. You know, after the fact, you know, and also think about it, with the baseball caps, the webcams, and all this stuff. It's really hard with, you know, cameras that you might have, you know, sparingly placed around the facility to catch a good picture of somebody's face. And again, most of these incidents, the person is either giving themselves up or getting killed. So it's very seldom they just disappear. So start looking at what you have. Think about things like, here it would be difficult, but in a lot of places it's, how do you funnel people through a single entrance? Is it worth putting greeters out? If you are putting greeters out, how far out should you put them? And then also you have to think about greeters that greeters, unfortunately, are usually the first to go. But they're buying you time. So how would a greeter get a signal back to you so you're aware something's happening so that you can start initiating a lockdown and start moving people out? And have you already thought about how are you going to do the lockdown? How are you going to move people out? If you haven't thought about it, thinking about it when the incident's taking place is really problematic. Because, I mean, think about yourselves when you get scared. You're not thinking straight. And most of the times when an incident starts, your body's heartbeat will double, your blood pressure goes up, you physically cannot function until your body calms back down again. That's why when so many incidents start, people can't type in 911. They just physically cannot do it. So being prepared and thinking about these things in advance gives you a big advantage. And, you know, then really thinking about what are the different impacts? How are you going to deal with the impact of something that happens? And really begin to plot this stuff out. And then it begins, how do you do drills? So you're going to need to think about this very carefully, because if you have a school, you don't want to scare the kids. So how are you going to teach the kids how to do an evacuation without scaring them and introducing more stress and making them not want to come because now they feel they're not coming to a safe facility? And doing a general congregation drill might not work, but it might help to have a core group of people who are here as regulars who understand that where the evacuation routes are, how to organize people and get them to safety, and plan all these things in advance. So much of this comes down to thinking about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then who's involved in doing this, and then starting to plan. How, if a certain scenario comes of you have an active shooter coming in, how are you going to deal with active shooter? If you're, you know, if it's something that it involves arson and theft, also, do you have precautions to deal with that? You know, if we have a fire that sweeps through the neighborhood, are you ready for that? So it's thinking about all those different things, planning them, and then not just doing it as here's a procedure of what we're going to do, but identify a core group of people who will understand that procedure and act on that procedure. And then it always helps to do a tabletop exercise for a few reasons. One, it familiarizes you with how you're going to do things. And second, it helps you identify people who can operate under stress. And being able to operate under stress has absolutely nothing to do with size or if you were previously in the military or any of these things. Some people can do it, some people can't. I mean, there was a terror attack in December on the Chinese consulate in Karachi, and the woman who literally saved the day is about this tall, and if she weighs 100 pounds, I'd be shocked. She was able to get everybody into a safe room and with her two colleagues do a complete lockdown, trap the terrorists in the courtyard. Not a single person under their charge was injured at all. And it was all because this one woman was able to keep her calm and did exactly what she was trained to do. She didn't try to be a hero. It was just, let's get people to safety and get them out of, the path of the bullets and out of the path of the grenades. And things worked out fine. But that's one of the reasons why you want to do it, these like little tabletop exercises, because you really don't know until you do it who is going to be able to handle the stress and be able to perform the way you want them to perform. And then, the other thing you need to start doing is every time you plan an activity, think about security as like the operating system in your computer. It's working there in the background. You don't need to be an expert in how it works. All you need to know is it's integral to what you're doing and that it's part of what you're doing and that it needs to be there. So it's the same thing. Whenever you plan any of the activities for the community center here, think about what are the security aspects while you're doing the planning and make it part of everything you do. So as you start integrating these things into your day-to-day activities, it just makes it a lot easier. And then when you sit down with a security professional, then you have the advantage of when they're doing the pitch to you, which almost always comes with how much is saving one life worth? Which, there is no answer, but it's a great sales pitch for selling you all kinds of nonsense. And it gives you the ability to talk to them. It also makes you more effective when you meet with the police and talk with the police about your concerns, that you've thought out what are the different risks. And then it helps with communication. I mean, obviously with the number of police that are here, you have an excellent relationship with the police. I've been amazed at how many houses of worship I've gone to where they don't even have a phone number contact for who to contact in the police if they have any concerns. So build on these relationships and get all this stuff planned in advance. So again, I give you the invitation. I'm willing to donate as much time as anybody wants to walk you through all these different steps, to walk you through ideas of where you would run, hide, and fight, different ways of fighting. A lot of it is based on slowing down an assailant to buy more time to get people out or to disable the assailant. So there are a lot of these little things to do. Again, it's really putting together a committee and talking these things out and planning what works best for this particular facility. Okay, thank you.
So does anybody have any questions or answers, or do you want to do them at the end?
I have a question. Thank you so much. Earlier you mentioned the ability to find the characteristics of the assailants and the people who are trying to harm the community and the type of people. How do you go about that? How do you go about finding those type of people who are wanting to harm the community?
Well, right now, if it's either a synagogue or a mosque, right now if it's a synagogue or a mosque, it's almost always white supremacists. And and it narrows, down every one of the white supremacist attacks have been a Christian white supremacist. So you eliminate a lot of the population, 10%, by looking at that. You also have there's a lot of literature on characteristics of white supremacists. People who don't fit, who would be surveilling the area. You have to you have to tap into, ask law enforcement, because hopefully they're looking out for people who are causing chatter. It's really difficult in the U.S. to track a lot of the white supremacists. First of all, there are a lot of them. Second of all, right now, with the way the politics are, there's not a strong push to crack down on them. And the other thing is, that, the nice thing about the United States and the problem with this is there is freedom of speech. And hate speech is protected in this country. But, when people in the area become more sensitized to, that this is unacceptable and, they notice things going on, then they can let you know, who might be suspicious. Somebody was sitting in a car, watching the facility, and one of the neighbors noticed it, and it didn't look like someone who would belong here. So that that's what you hope somebody you can come up with. Having a police car parked out front is a big deterrent for people showing up as well. It's still not clear how big of a role having guards out front is a deterrent for somebody doing something. Definitely, there's not enough information that an armed guard makes a difference. I've been amazed at how many congregations I've gone to now where they have actually hired random people who had served in the military who are sitting among the members of the congregation, and their security company has convinced them that if a shooter comes in, this person will be able to calmly stand up in the crowd and get a clean shot and take the assailant out with a single shot. But that's why, I tell people, that's why you have to think about it. Learn about some of these concepts. So when a security company tries to sell you that, which they charge about $100 an hour for that guard, you can say, show me some statistics or something that actually can happen. There aren't that many Clint Eastwoods around, believe me. Also look at, one of the things, look at crime stats from this area. How active are the white supremacists in this area? And so you get a better feel for how big of a threat it is here. And one of the things that, the company I work with in Pakistan does, which would be nice if people did here, is they had provided free security for the Christian churches in country for the past 20 years. And the company absorbs all the cost, and to date, not a single guard has asked for overtime. Every guard who's done it has volunteered. So you can also set up arrangements with other synagogues, churches, and cross-pollinate. And if you have greeters, have people from other religions also in the area. In some places that has shown a little deterrence against attacks. So, okay. Yep.
You had mentioned tabletop exercises?
Tabletop exercises?
Yeah, so are those like drills?
Tabletop exercises are, you essentially, you're sitting around a table and you have a scenario that you're talking through.
Okay.
And like you're discussing, this is the procedure and how you would do it, and usually someone tosses in, who's conducting the tabletop exercise, will toss in a scenario that you're not prepared for, and you have to think quickly based on what you've been trained to do. How would you handle that? So it's simpler than a drill, but then also it's always worth doing drills. But drills take a lot of planning, because drills can either be a waste of time, or in some cases, and this is what's happening with school kids, they're done in too realistic a fashion, and they're scaring school kids, and then they don't want to go to school, or when they're in school they can't concentrate. So doing a drill it takes a lot more planning, whereas the tabletop exercise, it's a talk through of things. And part of the talk through, you can also, like if we were talking through, if you were to evacuate people here and lock down the back doors, who would be responsible for locking down the back doors? How would you evacuate people out here? You can walk through the procedure as well. But, it's good to start with the simple, less stressful way, and then build yourself up. That's another mistake a lot of people do. They're going to go, we're going to do it like a full-blown, realistic, and a shooter is attacking, and people just get traumatized. But, yeah.
So how many people do you suggest be on this committee? And then the problem with our house of worship is that we're on a weekday,
Mhm.
and we have congregational prayers on a Friday, and a lot of the people that are here on Friday are not the ones that live close by or are here on the weekends, and so there's not a consistent group of people here to be able to act at the time of an incident.
Okay, so think about those different activities you're doing and try to take a sampling from the different groups that might be here. And a key group that gets left off of committees that absolutely should be on this committee is whoever is doing maintenance. Have them involved in the committee. You'd be amazed at what they see. And they really are not aware of, you know, that they should say something, or who they should say it to, or a lot of times people who are doing maintenance are, you know, consider themselves less educated, lower than other people in the group, and they're shy to say something. So definitely invite them to be in the committee. But do it as a sampling of the different activities that you're doing, and, you know, those different time frames. So like have someone who's doing the school program, have someone who's leading prayers on Friday. You know, someone like yourself from the board should be on it. Have whoever's doing maintenance on it. So there's no ideal number, but
So if you want to do tabletop exercises and not scare the members, then how do you train them to evacuate in the most efficient and safe manner?
well, I would say start with, do you have people who are always here on Friday that are regulars?
There are a few, but usually, you know, the people who are regulars to any institution are the more elderly and not always, because the other people who are working, you know, are not, you know, are hit and miss as to.
Yeah, but how elderly are the elderly?
I'm sure you can find a.
If they're my age, they can still do something, you know?
Actually, they could probably do better than most of us, but, so I think the ears and eyes aspect, everybody can participate. Now,
Mhm.
finding the people who can handle stress at the drop of a hat, that's gonna be the challenge.
Yeah, but you don't know. A lot of elderly people are really good at handling stress.
That's why
They've been through
they
a
made
lot,
it to,
right?
yeah.
And how do you share the evacuation plan with the, like she's saying, ours is very, you know, some people come on Friday, some people come Sunday, some people just come once a year. So if we come up with a plan.
Well, that's why I say start with the regulars. You know, the committee needs to come up with the plan. Then they should expand it to the regulars. Then you have to decide, is it really going to be a benefit to try to do it with the larger congregation that's coming? You know, and, you know, some people say it is better, some people say it isn't. You know, to me, it really depends on, you know your congregation, is it going to make a difference? And will they be able to learn it? Or, you know, are there other people that you can identify in the congregation who you think would be helpful? But, you know, to just try to pull off an exercise with everybody, you know, again, you can be generating fear and not really gaining anything in terms of being more effective in running the
So
exercise.
let's say you're on the board of directors of this mosque. What is your top 1 to 4? What would you definitely do starting yesterday?
Starting as getting the committee together, and then having that committee start, you know, informing people that you know that there's this new philosophy. Everybody is involved. Having at the very beginning, having that committee come up with a plan of how do you communicate information, because information is your best source of preventing something from happening.
So do
So-
you want like sending out messages to all the congregants in the community that don't come to the mosque, there's some issue going on, or?
Oh,
what kind of
no, I'm
communication are you
thinking
talking
more in terms of letting everybody know who does come to the mosque, that if they see something that they don't think is right or gives them concern, they there's a way for them to communicate that. Either you designate people that they can contact directly, you have an email address, you have, a box that they can put the concern in, but there's a way for them to communicate. And then you have that committee set up that they can take that information and they can look at it and discuss it and think about, is this really a threat, or is this just, to pick on the old people, one of the old people who just want to, like to kvetch about stuff, but they can look into it. And then within that group, you've designated somebody who's the interface with the police. So if they've looked at this threat and they feel that the threat is something that is real, that you have somebody who can then take it to the next step. So you've plotted out essentially a procedure of where that information flows. And then it's really key, if you want to get people to give you information, is somebody else in that committee needs to contact the initial person who submitted the concern and tell them what the resolution was. Because if people know that they're putting in information and they're not getting any feedback, you'll stop getting the information very quickly. So, to me, that's one of the...
Security alert.
Right, and you can have something, security alert, you can set up on WhatsApp that you can, send out to everybody in the community. Here's something, that might be of concern. And that same little group you've set up on WhatsApp, people can submit a concern or something that they've seen through the WhatsApp. And, but really getting the committee in place is key.
I would love to take more questions, but I want to give the chance for the police department to present their aspect of personal security, and then we can have tea, coffee, and continue this discussion, which probably is a very long discussion for all of us, and we can subgroup it into another committee. So please, Officer Humayu and Officer Chief of Police Neslight's going to give us pointers today.
Got a pretty big portion. How's everybody doing? First of all, it's truly an honor to be here tonight and talking to you about security. And as Dr. Siegel was saying, I don't have anything to sell for you unless you want to buy a used police car. I can sell you that. That's just a joke, by the way. So, I agree with what he's saying. There's a plan. And one of the things when we're talking about tabletop exercises that we talked about. So back in 1999, shortly after Columbine, the high school attack in April of 1999, is when our department really started looking at mass casualty events differently and how we would train. Myself, Lieutenant Dan Hall, who is standing back there now, were on SWAT at that particular time, and we really looked at the Columbine effect of us stalling and kind of waiting and being very measured about how we responded to coming in differently. And so the whole run, hide, fight, active shooter type of training, tabletop training, I think is important for everybody to have, because one thing, it's going to teach you how to be prepared, how to think, how to see signs, and you see something, say something immediately. When I look at crime, and I've been doing this for 31 and a half years, I've worked all over the department. I spent 12 years in SWAT, I've worked gangs, I've worked homicide. I've worked just about almost every single assignment this department has to offer. One thing always in common when we see something happen, someone will always say, well, I saw it, I just didn't think it was anything and I didn't call, okay? So the one thing I want to really stress, if you get anything out of this tonight, is if you see something that just makes your hair stand up, it doesn't look right to you, I need that call, okay? For several reasons, because you might be able to prevent something from happening. A lot of times it's not. It's just something that doesn't appear right, and that's okay. We can handle that. But I'd rather get that call and be able to prevent something than not get that call and have to respond to something and now somebody lost their life possibly. So always, if you see something, please immediately say something. But going back to the tabletop exercise, that's something that we can do, the San Diego Police Department can do for you free of service. We can come in and give you training, and it can be anything from just a quick 30-minute briefing of what happens, what you're going to expect from the San Diego Police Department, or for law enforcement for that matter, how we are going to respond to an incident like a mass casualty type event, right? But we can give you that training, and we can do a tabletop exercise for you. It really is how much time you want to spend is how much time we're willing to give you, and that's free of charge. So we can come in and do that. I know Dan's a trainer. I was a trainer back in the day, back in the early 2000s, but we've got Lieutenant Hall that does it, Sergeant Josh Defoe that does it currently, that are far more up to speed on this now than I am. So I'll offer that up to you. But one of the things that I really want to stress, and it really goes to collaboration and what happens after we see attacks, whether it be Poway Synagogue, the New Zealand attack. What I do as the chief of police, and it really involves a lot of the folks that are here, the officers that are here, as soon as I get alerted on anything, we have a protocol where we start putting things in places of worship, okay? And it doesn't matter if it's a synagogue that was attacked, a mosque that was attacked, or anything else where you're seeing mass casualty events. We will go into different protocols, making certain, one, that somebody from the San Diego Police Department reaches out and lets them know that, hey, we're aware of this, we're paying attention to this worldwide, and that we're not seeing anything, any threats of anything happening in the city of San Diego. But absent that, and out of abundance of caution, you will see us put things in place. And that might be a police car. It might be several officers walking in and saying hello and doing a meet and greet at your service. It could be a combination of all that, and it could be some stuff that's covert if we get tips. But we will always reach out, and I reach out myself a lot, but as you can imagine, I'm on the phone with a lot of folks when things happen worldwide, to include our federal partners and stuff like that, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to glean as much information on what happened to make certain that it doesn't happen here. And for me to start getting into those steps to make certain that there's no like-minded folks that might want to do something in the city of San Diego. Dr. Siegel talked about what I would call white nationalists. We are seeing a problem with that. We are very involved, and we do a very good job of preventing things that we get tips on. And we do that a whole bunch of different ways. Some of the ways I cannot discuss. We prevent a whole lot of things from happening in the city. It's nothing I can talk about. All sides, from all, I don't want to say like-minded folks, but when you look at folks that are willing to come into a place of worship, or go into a school, or go into a shopping mall, whatever it happens to be, a fair, and create violence, those are like-minded people, in my opinion, because they have one thing in mind, and that's casualties. And so that's the one thing that, as the chief of police, that I'm trying to prevent. And so we train all the time on this. But my opinion, it's more about prevention. And it's more about, as the doctor was saying, making certain you folks have a plan, because you need to be prepared, and you need to have an understanding of, okay, you want to shelter in place. What's that look like? I guarantee if I went through this room right here and said, what does shelter in place mean to you? You're going to give me a different answer. You're going to give me a different answer. He's going to give me a different answer. We can't have that. It needs to be one answer. It needs to have a plan for this facility. What does shelter in place mean? Okay? So we can provide all that. And it's just a matter of fact, is someone reaching out and getting it on the calendar, probably reaching out through Homey and getting it on our calendar, and we'll make it happen. And we can make it happen very, very quickly. And the nice thing is we can do it on dates where most people are available for you. So we could do it on a Friday. If we need to do it on a weekend, we'll do it on a weekend. If we need to do it at night, we'll do it at night. I've got officers that work 7/24, so we can do it pretty much any time. And that's the beautiful thing about us. But I also want to really talk about the officers that are here. The one thing that's unique about law enforcement, and I think really only other profession that does this is the military, is we run to danger. And so know that if something were to happen here, you're going to get a whole lot of folks running in here to help you. And we'll do that. I guarantee you we'll do that. But again, I would rather prevent that first. So with that, if you ever need anything, whether you want what I call a phantom car, where we park a police car in your parking lot, we do meet and greets, you have officers here, you're always going to get that for us. And that speaks for everything. I know I always talk with Iman Taha and doing different things when there's different threats to make certain that there's a presence. And that's what we do. That's what the men and women in this police department do. And I could talk for a long time, but I would rather open it up to questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Because I can say for a fact that the police department in our area and throughout the city has been here every time we've called them. They're here at the moment's notice, and they have given us their phone numbers, and they're available 24/7, and I can't be more thankful for their service, and I trust them to show up and to approach what's happening rather than many of the security guards that we hire. I mean, because this is what you do, and this is what you know, and this is what you're good at. So I really appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
I think it's good to be vigilant, you know, we were talking about actually preventing and calling in. So do you have any tips for what we should be looking for, you know, to be vigilant?
You know, it's anything, but one thing, and I think it's actually happened here before, is people asking probing questions. People that are not members here, wanting to know about security, wanting to know about when services are going, where the kids are here, different things like that. That should be a tip to you going, why is somebody asking so many probing questions? Phone calls, same. You know, that's something that I definitely want to look into, because that's something that we can look into. We've got different capabilities of looking at different things. And so you do that, and just people walking around, people taking photographs, kind of walking around the perimeter of your property, taking a look at different things, are things that should kind of tell you, hey, and it could be something that could be very innocent, but it also could be something very nefarious, that someone's looking at doing something. So those are kind of the tips. To me, most of the time, it's the probing questions. When we start seeing things and when we get a lot of threats, a lot of it is the probing, is people are trying to figure out vulnerabilities.
For both of you, what I get is that when we don't know people, or people are around that are new, that we should take upon ourselves to go and introduce ourselves
Yes.
and to start asking the probing questions.
You know, and I'm not asking anybody to be paranoid, okay?
No, but just casually.
Yeah, there's a difference between paranoia and self-awareness. The other thing I will tell you that I see all the time from people that are victims of crime is we spend way too much time on these folks with our heads buried, not paying attention to what is going on around you. That's a problem. Have self-awareness, and I'm not talking about just here, but out in the community, have self-awareness. You know, as the chief of police, I'm also a target, so I have to make certain that I'm always kind of paying attention to. And so just, again, I'm not trying to paranoia, but as Dr. Siegel says, have a plan, but make certain everybody knows what that plan is and communicate that with all your membership. Because that's important, because I want the same person doing the same thing every single time. And that's some of the stuff that we can have on a drill. And learning to be quick under comm is definitely, as you're saying, is
So we have the
absolutely-
warriors over here, all the women with their scarves on,
Yeah.
and they have, you know, they're always under threat, and they're
Sure.
quite good about self-awareness. But do you
Yes.
have any other tips for them?
Yeah, you know, and that's something, you know, that we've seen, unfortunately, here in the last couple of weeks in the city of San Diego. Started a couple of weeks ago down at Beach in Columbia, when the lady from Somalia the ladies, I should say, from Somalia were attacked. Then we had the 17-year-old Syrian gentleman get attacked out in East San Diego, and then we just had another one this past Saturday. A person in the traditional garments had something thrown on them. Unknown if that is particularly a hate crime at this particular time. Nothing was said. So it's difficult, you know, and again, because I don't want folks to get paranoid, but, you know, just be aware at night, and I say this to everybody, especially women, but at night, don't be out alone, especially late at night, walking to your car or something like that. Get somebody to escort you. Travel in groups, you know, 2s are better than 1, 3 are better than 2. But just be aware, and again, if you see something, get on a phone immediately, because we're gonna get to you. If you call 911, we're gonna get to you very, very quickly.
So should this happen, what should our lady do? If
they-
somebody approaches them that's not friendly?
When is like it's enough, when to call the police?
I don't want you worrying about calling the police. If you think you need to call the police, I don't want you sitting there going, should I call the police or not? If you're thinking about calling the police, just call the police. Okay? I just, out of abundance of caution, I'd rather get to you and say, you know, that person, he just caused me some concerns and I don't know what he was going to do, because that's the way I can guarantee your safety. So again, if you're thinking, you know, maybe I should call the police, that's kind of go with your first hint that you should call the police.
What do you say when you call the police, that something,
You think, you know, and that, like, if someone's following you or something like that,
you say something?
just that, I think somebody's following me and I'm afraid, can you please send a police officer? We're going to send a police officer.
Do you take pictures? Do you take videos?
You can, you know, the thing is sometimes that can get somebody very irate. And so I always say be the best witness you can be without instigating something. And so now yes, but I'm a little differently trained and sometimes I'm a little differently equipped whether I'm in uniform or street clothes than others are. But just be your best witness. Get to a lit area, especially if you can get to somewhere where people are, and make noise, because people don't want to be around noise. So make certain others can see you. And
So
they'll
we
try-
physically, vocally make noises and?
Yeah, because it's going to draw attention, and people don't want to have attention drawn, especially if they're going to
So
do
do we
it.
make just random noises, or do we just yell at that person? Dinosaur? No.
But walking to where there are other people.
Yes,
It's
that's what I'm
probably
saying.
best.
That's the first thing.
That should be the first
Yeah,
thing.
get to a lit area and get to somewhere where, you know, like for instance, if you're walking through a neighborhood and you think you're being followed, go up on somebody's door,
Just knock on the door.
knock on the door.
I would know what to do.
No, but you can tell them, hey, call the police, I think someone's following me.
But if you're also in somebody's doorway, they're less likely
Please
to
come up
follow
on
you there and come up after you because they're afraid they'll get caught.
Yep.
So my son said the other day somebody was following him and he's in another city. And so he just went up randomly to somebody and said, pretend like you know me. There's somebody
Yeah.
following me and I need to get away.
It goes back to the numbers.
Right.
It goes back to one person. Most people are not too concerned about confronting one person. People are concerned, one person's concerned about confronting multiples. So that's a great scenario. Yeah, go, hey, can you sit here and talk to me? I'm a little worried about this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chief, if I may,
Yeah.
when they talk about rape prevention for women, the biggest thing that they yell or tell them to yell is don't yell rape, yell fire. People tend to shy away from physical confrontation because they're afraid. They're afraid to get involved. But if you yell fire, everybody wants to come and see the show. So
That's a great
fire,
point.
fire,
That's a
fire,
great
as
point.
loud as you can, tends to get more people to come to your attention to see where's the smoke, where's the fire, versus just yelling or just help me or just I'm being raped, because people tend to want to distance themselves from the physical confrontation. So make the noise like Chief's saying, like Dr. Siegel is saying, but again, selective of what you're actually saying will invoke a certain response in people.
That's an excellent idea.
Bear that in mind. And then when you also talk about, like Doctor was saying, about how do you report, or should you report? Great book you can all pick up off of Amazon. Dr. Gavin Becker, The Gift of Fear, talks about the subversion of natural instinct in situations like that, where people don't want to be construed as an alarmist and say to themselves, I'm not going to call the police, or I'm not going to make a scene because I don't want the civility of myself to give in to the situation. And that suppresses your natural instincts to put yourself at harm, when really you should be calling us or taking some sort of preventive measures. So Gavin Becker, Gift of Fear, great book, you should all have it, all read it. And then lastly, whatever your committee comes up with as far as how you report suspicious activity, come up with a cheat sheet that you can push out all the characteristics that we're looking for to investigate that crime, or not crime, but that suspicious activity. And as the chief said, those things can be pivotal for us because we can start to interject pre-incident and identify people based off of that good suspect actions, that good suspect description. You know, correlate that with something else that may be going on, we gather someone else, next thing you know, we stop something before it can even get traction. So informing your people on how to report by structuring some sort of report mechanism so they're comfortable when they talk to us and what the information is that we're looking for. We can give you examples of that too, that we use with different businesses to be able to make that happen.
Perfect.
I have a question. The services that you guys provide for free, do you guys also provide like self-defense or anything like that, especially for women, given the hostage situation that's, you know?
We don't do that, no. So I can't even recommend anybody to do that because I'm not allowed to endorse others. But that's something you have to make that decision if you feel comfortable doing that. But I guarantee there's a lot of, if you're looking into self-defense, there's a lot of good schools that will do that for a very reasonable amount of money. And there's some even that do it for free.
We did have our jiu-jitsu teacher give us a lesson,
Yeah.
and he was really effective.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming, David.
After the New Zealand learned the security guard, was there always a difference opinion of how we should use them? Should they be out of the front as a deterrent, or should they be somewhere in a corner where they can see everything but nobody sees them? So what exactly would you say is the right thing for the security guard to do?
You know, talking what Dr. Siegel was saying, I mean, security guards are a deterrent, okay? So if you're going to use them, in my opinion, okay, and what I've seen them best used is visibility. So if you're gonna do that, I would have them closer to your entrance where they can be seen versus all the way in here. Nobody knows they're here until they get in here. And now all of a sudden you have this interaction, possible confrontation with a lot of innocent bystanders. So if you're gonna use them, put it at your entry points.
You know, also keep in mind, the advantage of having a guard out front or a greeter out front is that people who do these attacks, they don't have experience in doing these attacks. So it's a one-off for them, and they're nervous. So usually it's the first person who challenges them or asks them a question or slows them down is when they'll start. So having somebody out ahead, you know, unfortunately, that's the person who's probably going to get it first. But what you're really doing is buying time for everybody else. And, you know, you think about placing people in that sense, even though it sounds kind of cruel to the person who's out front. But, you know, when you think about you maybe gain 30 seconds, and these events are over in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 30 seconds buys you a lot of time. So, you know, think of, placing the person that way. Yes.
So I know when New Zealand happened, after that, people, obviously it was recorded, so a lot of people actually watch the video.
Yes.
And so questions that came up to, I think, our community was, well, nobody really tried to stop him. Like, if someone had just confronted, and, people were dying anyway.
Right.
If someone had just kind of attacked him or confronted him, then it could have saved a lot of lives.
Possibly.
Okay, so is that, obviously, these are scenarios that you can't script out.
Right.
But, in training a community, is that something that you would?
And that's part of that whole run, hide, fight, okay? So the first thing to do is, if you can, is to run and get away, right?
Right.
Then the next is hide, and then if that doesn't work, and all of a sudden, say you sheltered in place, and now all of a sudden the person's there, then you have the fight.
This is what actually happened in New Zealand
Yes,
also.
exactly.
One of
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
One of them
One
fought
of
back.
them did, yeah.
And we can discuss that, as Lieutenant Hall was talking about. We've got a phenomenal program. It's actually It's a national program that's been taught, so it's something that we definitely can do.
What did you learn from 5 miles down the street at the synagogue? What did you learn from that scenario
So,
to help us?
yeah, so I actually responded to that.
Okay.
I was in uniform already, I was getting ready to go to an event. I live about 10 minutes from there. So I was actually one of the first officers on scene there. Couple things that learned in to what Dr. Siegel was just saying. Deterrence, there was none.
Yeah.
So very easy access, right? The other thing, here was and I don't say his name because he doesn't deserve it. Here was a young man that had a plan, he had ideology, and he went to go put the plan in place. But he was not trained. Thank goodness, because if he was, more lives would have been lost. And as soon as he was confronted, he fled.
So we're back to the same point.
Yeah,
Somebody
he
needs to
did.
confront.
He was not well trained. He literally had just purchased that weapon. He was not familiar with that weapon. And that was a good thing, because if he had, he could have been much more deadly in that synagogue.
Did I hear right that there was somebody who did have a concealed carry in that congregation?
So it's a little unique in that. So you had one person that had a concealed carry that handed the gun to somebody else, handed it off to an off-duty law enforcement officer. So, who then fired at him, and then he drove down the road, and then one of our officers actually located him and took him into custody.
So that,
And more will come. I wish I could really discuss that
Right.
case more, but because it's still in the courts, there are some unique things that really limited the amount of people that he was able to fatally injure. That will come out, but I'm just not at liberty to discuss it this particular.
you know what I'm here for, is I want clues as to what to
Yes.
do, so that we're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Well,
That's why
I
you're
mean,
both here.
If you have somebody who has the nerve to do it, and there aren't a lot of people like that, to charge the person and bear hug them and try to tackle them is the best thing to do.
But you saw what happened in the school with that, they actually came up and, confronted and took the gun and just, like I said, bear hugged and just waited for help to come, other teachers to come, so.
Yeah.
That whole run, hide, fight, we can go through that, it's a mindset. And unfortunately, what you see a lot of times is just the pure panic, and people aren't thinking about training, and that's why it's important to not only get the training, but then to have the conversations all the time. So for us in law enforcement, we are talking about responding to mass casualty events on a weekly basis, because it's something you need to constantly be thinking about to ingrain in your mind of what you're going to do, what it is that you have to keep progressing forward. For us, even though you're hearing gunfire, even though you might be passing somebody that's been injured, because you want to keep going to stop.
So I know that if an event, God forbid, happens anywhere in any facility, it's going to take you guys here at least 5 minutes to get here. Then you have to assess the situation and then proceed. And so in that 5 minutes, what should we be doing?
Well, that's why you need to have that plan, and trying to limit the access is the first and foremost thing, right? There's really three things when you look at for active shooters, right? Limiting access to possible victims is huge, okay? So they're either going to, one, surrender, they're going to flee, or they're going to be abducted or possibly killed by law enforcement responding. And so biggest thing is have a plan, shelter in place, have lockdown points, and I know. So this is a unique facility.
We
When I
really
came in
need
here,
you guys. You can have a PlayStation.
looking at this is a very unique facility because there's not a lot of places
To hide.
to shelter.
And our walls are,
I haven't gone back here, so
No,
I
there's
don't,
nothing.
I
There's
don't know what
nothing.
it is. I just saw the door. It looked like a hallway.
there's
But is
plastic.
this the only entrance?
No,
Yes.
all of these
No,
are,
all, they're back.
No.
and there's
you
an
can-
entrance over there too.
So there's entrance points that come through these side
Yeah,
doors here.
yeah,
But can some of these entrances be closed, locked, so you're
Yes.
funneling people through?
but they all glass.
So those are all dependent on
But
humans.
still, people think first that they're going to open the door.
Yes.
They don't usually shoot through the door until it's locked, so you're still buying some time.
Yeah, these are,
Right.
we usually keep law.
I think
That-
that's the
again, that's-
biggest thing is we have to educate our community to close all the doors.
And
Right.
that's something that we can do a
They don't-
threat assessment on. And, that- and that's something we can help you create. We can do a threat assessment on the facility.
I think Officer Hall has,
We've had some discussions
Yeah,
about that.
so he can help you. So Lieutenant Hall has been an instructor in this kind of stuff for quite some time. He was also on the SWAT team for a long time. Dan and I were on-
he's amazing. He's
Dan and I were
always
on the team
responsive.
together for quite some time, and so there's no doubt in my mind that Dan can give you some great suggestions on what I would call target hardening, to give you some ideas of how you would shelter in place.
And the simple things that we discussed before, it's also cost effective, where the doctor's saying, yes, we want that one entry point where people are coming in. We want to have that engagement and identification of potential threats at distance to buy time. But even with all these glass windows, something as simple as putting up drapes, so people can't see who's in here, your bad person can't see who's in here. You still have glass, but they can't see moving targets beyond the drapes or curtains or whatever's denying the visual penetration from an outside perspective looking in. And then if something kicks off, it allows your congregation and your group to move wherever they need to move without being visually tracked by the suspect. Little things like that can impede their ability to think freely on their feet, like the doctor's saying, they're not well trained.
Right, I mean, even reflective tape on the glass, so
Yeah, I
you
was
can
thinking
see
about
out and they
one
can't see
side,
in.
one
Right.
side.
Or the thing
viewing-
that, I don't know if you would agree with this. I have this fixation on fire hydrants, fire extinguishers. Strategically placed,
Yeah.
a fire extinguisher is a blinding agent.
Yes, it is.
It will slow down an assailant better than trying to shoot at them. And if you spray somebody else, it's only temporarily blinding them. So there's no collateral damage. So strategically, if you have the
You talk about
greeters
the ones
out
that
to
spray
slow
a
somebody
big mist
down.
of white, or sometimes like kind of a bright yellow, can be a lot of different things. Yeah,
That's a
fire,
good idea.
make sure it's that and not water.
Right.
Water's not gonna do a whole lot for you.
Right.
No, the
But-
fire alarm, the sprinklers.
There's, that's the thing of doing like a walkthrough and talking about these things. It's amazing how many little things you can find. I mean, at a synagogue, I showed them how they could weaponize their prayer shawl stand, that they could then move it quickly in the path of an assailant, and again, slow them down so they could do lockdown in the sanctuary. There's all these like little things that you can, until you get a group together that's working with the police, doing a threat assessment and thinking about all these little things.
We're gonna be best friends.
You really come up with a plan, and you'd be amazed how many things you can do for free that will be a lot more effective than putting in more cameras.
Do you think we should buy those first aid bleeding kit things?
I'm a fan of what I would call quick clot. So our officers carry it, and I could tell you, it doesn't seem like a month that doesn't go by that our officers are saving somebody's life using it. And
So
it
I'll
just-
get information from him with which ones he recommends.
Yeah, so we carry it.
But we should have one on,
Yes, I would.
because until you get here.
We carry basically a small trauma kit, basically. And it has the quick clot agent in it. It also has tourniquets to do stuff. And I'm not saying you should go put tourniquets on everybody, but they do save lives.
The whole idea is that at the end of the day, whatever your committee decides, the direction that you move together in, you create empowerment. The idea that in, God forbid, an active shooter situation, it's not a victimization. It's a response to an event for all of you, because you've thought about it, you've planned for it, during and after, so that if someone is injured, you're prepared to deal with that too. That creates empowerment. That also gets rid of what the chief was alluding to, and what also Dr. C was alluding to, what we call perceptual delay. The idea of your mind spinning in a circle, I can't believe this happened, I can't believe this happened, I can't believe this happened.
It's too late.
You're paralyzed, you're not doing anything. All this